Good afternoon, listeners, those within and outside the Gambia. We are extending the same salutations to our brothers and sisters in the sister Republic of Senegal, to those in other nations within the ECOWAS sub-region, the entire continent of Africa, to any other part of the world, nation, society, region, government, organization, or any other party that identifies itself with the promotion of democracy, the rule of law, respect for human and people's rights and human dignity. This is your brother Essa Bokarr Sey back again on the airways with you. In today's program, we are going to bring forward topical issues that are definitely a confirmation of the view we had months back, that the evil machinations that have constantly been mushrooming within the Gambia thanks to the incumbent regime must be internationalized. As we warned before, what is affecting the Gambians within and outside, we definitely not exclude all the citizens of other nations. Now, we have reached a point where the international community, starting with the former colonial power of the Gambia, which is Britain, can no longer ignore the effervescence within this small West African country. First on the agenda today is this: Britain warns of anti-UK sentiment in Gambia, by Associated Press, published February 10, 2014. Dakar, Senegal. The United Kingdom has warned its citizens of rising anti-British rhetoric from Gambia President Yahya Jammeh, who last year accused the former colonial power of organizing coup attempts in the West African nation. A British travel advisory posted last week said Jammeh's statements, reported widely by local media, could increase anti-UK sentiment among parts of the wider population, and warned tourists to avoid discussing politically sensitive topics. Gambia is a popular beach destination for British tourists, although Jammeh's government has been regularly criticized by Britain and other Western powers for human rights abuses, including when it executed 9 death row inmates by firing squad in August 2012. Last October, Gambia accused Britain and the United States of organizing coup attempts and financing the political opposition, allegations both governments denied. Well, that ends the powerful story from the Associated Press, of course, being a reference to what was posted on the website of the Home Office in the United Kingdom. Well, we'll do an analysis of this topic and then bring another one which concerns Canada. And then we will do compare and contrast between the two, and then finally show the world that the victims in this are the Gambians, both home and abroad, of course including other nationals, which we warned against moons back. Now, about 2-3 weeks ago, I came out and warned against the impassive nature and the indifference being shown in the case of Alhaji Mahmoud Sise and Ibu Job, who are citizens of the United Kingdom, who are citizens of the United States of America, excuse me for that. Well, they are Gambian-born and naturalized citizens in the United States. These are young men who withdrew their 401k savings and other savings and went back to the Gambia to invest into business, to invest and then do business. Well, to the surprise of many, and of course the sorrowful end of their story has unearthed more to justify our position against the incumbent regime in the Gambia. During that time, I did give a warning that if these nations stay indifferent, sooner or later, what affects Alhaji Mahmoud Sise and Ibu Diop will definitely affect other citizens who are not them. And this is not the first time. Prior to their arrest, 2 other US citizens were targeted in the name of Amadou Jane and Tamsir Jassi. It was thanks to the intervention of the Reverend Jesse Jackson that they were released. Now that the government knows media has an impact, therefore can propel or amplify the atrocities that are taking place in Banjul, they have developed a new style. Kidnap without leaving traces, eliminate or hold incommunicado those citizens. And this is what the new strategy is, what affects the lives of Alhaji Mahmoud Sise and Ibu Diop respectively as we speak. And then we have also seen other things take place. The other lesson we have learned from this article is that the Senegalese government, which has always stayed indifferent to a point where they expelled the late Kukoy Samba Sanyang from their country in defense of what they call ECOWAS protocol, when in actual fact the one who breaks the rules is Yahya Jammeh himself. They have now come to find out that what I have been warning them against is happening, that the Gambia's case must be internationalized. This is indeed not reported by the Senegalese press, neither could the Gambia government accuse Dakar of exposing the atrocities therein. This is Associated Press, but Dakar's name has been cited. So, what does this teach us further down the line? It teaches us the fact that nobody can control facts as facts are stubborn. That ends the first part in English. Stay tuned for the second part, and then we will combine the two of them and do the analysis in Wolof for you. Thank you. Brothers and sisters, this is your brother Essa Bokarr Sey again. We proceed on the second part, which is another English version. And this one is an outcome of an investigation we conducted through Muhammed Sillah and others in Toronto. This is a very touching story, but at the same time exposing the unknown and the unsaid and the hidden within the detention centers in Canada. After reading this story that we heard from the British government, it makes us revisit programs we held here before, warning these Western countries that the best way to fight illegal immigration, or the best way to make sure that their citizens are safe, especially in West Africa, because anti-UK sentiments expressed in the Gambia, of course, as I said before, it is good breeding ground for extremists, for whoever wants to use terrorism against the Western Hemisphere. And remember, West Africa is very close. So what do you expect if such a thing happens in the Gambia? But the contradiction here is that those very Western countries that know about this to a point where they're concerned, announcing it, the whole world hearing it, are also harboring other nations within the Western Hemisphere who would definitely not hesitate to send back Gambians to that hell. Therefore, the fight against illegal immigration, or what creates asylees or refugees, is to make sure that the organizations, the people who are ready to stand up and be counted and flush these dictatorial regimes from West Africa or other parts of Africa must be sponsored, must be empowered by these Western countries. Otherwise, these travel bans or travel advisory publications or press releases will keep coming out. They will never stop. Now let's study the case of Muhammed Sillah and see where the contradiction lies, because this is what happens if people stay passive and indifferent before dictatorial regimes like that one in the Gambia. There is no way that anybody can ever cuddle a dictator. The same thing was applied in the case of Muhammad Gaddafi. We all saw the end. The same thing was applied in the case of Charles Taylor. We all saw the end. Samuel Doe, countless parts of Africa today. You've seen the latest position that some African heads of state have taken, calling it Africa versus the West, when in actual fact it is a club of heads of state shamelessly claiming to represent Africa when they are the ones electrocuting Africans worse than what the colonialists and the slave masters did. Now let's read Muhammad's story too. Canada. Bogus Immigration Detention Reviews. A Mexican lady dies at a detention center where Muhammed Sillah, a Gambian son, is kept in Communicado. Who is next? Hello Gambia investigates through Muhammed Sillah and others in Toronto, Canada. A detention review is required of a detainee after 48 hours of detention, then after 7 days. If release was not granted, then after every 30 days. If release was not granted, at the end of 7-day review. Depending on each individual case, members of the IRB would consider detainees with criminal history worldwide, previous compliance with CBSA or release orders, plus submissions from the Minister's Council under the detainee lawyer before rendering a decision. However, all immigration detention reviews are scheduled to commence at 9 a.m. But reviews are always held upon the arrival and readiness of members and Minister's Council throughout the day. It is up to a member to wait for a bondsperson or a lawyer to be present, but usually they don't wait. Detainees are usually in a limbo, not knowing when their hearing will preside, leaving them in a state of total dismay, including bondspersons and lawyers. Detainees get the blame for the long wait, as many lawyers would charge more legal fees and bondspersons usually would leave, thereby jeopardizing potential release of detainees as they have got all the errands to run. This is solely because there is no fixed or specific time of reviews and everybody is scheduled at 9 a.m. But the review could commence up to 5 hours later for a possible 5-minute review. That's how it works here, said a lady at the Toronto Refugee Affairs Council office. Before the arrival of a lawyer and or a detainee, members are always seated and usually conversing with ministers' councils prior to the commencement of a hearing, and would stop upon arrival of a third-party detainee lawyer. There is where it all begins, brothers and sisters. That is definitely not straight. It is not sincere. It is just cosmetic. I have experienced this in some of my reviews. Now it's Muhammed Sillah speaking, and I wonder why they stop and what the conversation was about. They don't tell me what they spoke about, as they are lawfully required to. Factually, the members are definitely in a friendly tone of voice to ministers' councils like family, rather than to the person concerned or lawyer. Now, brothers and sisters, how do you expect impartiality here and a fair judgment? Those who should defend the detainee are so friendly with the ones who want to keep him. This is cosmetic, Canada. A member of the IRB proceeds by addressing the tribunal briefly, identifying the detainee person concerned by stating the date and place of the hearing before allowing the Minister's Council to address the tribunal about the case of the detainee and or the new developments. The member would then ask the lawyer or the person concerned to respond. The Minister's Council is then given the chance to respond, and usually that is when the Minister's Council would take all necessary efforts plus possible false allegations backed by sworn statements, declarations by their colleagues to ensure the member furthers the detention of a detainee. Ultimately, that is what they want. Because, brothers and sisters, these people survive on this. Without these detainees, they don't have jobs, and they want to make sure that they maintain them. There will be a detention center, they will have jobs and do these reviews and get paid during sessions. Simply put, that's what they do. Usually, we continue now. Usually, the member becomes satisfied with the Ministers' Council submissions at this point and would not allow their lawyer or detainee to respond. So why do we have a lawyer? If a lawyer wouldn't be allowed to respond, isn't this similar to the Gambia? Of course, they cannot be any different. That is exactly why I pounce on our Gambia Bar Association. This place here is not because of the lawyer. It's not good, but the lawyer is not even allowed to speak up. But that also renders that lawyer to be incompetent, because you should shout instead of this coming from the mouth of a detainee. The first thing that lawyer should have done was to call a press conference at the door of the detention center and denounce what's happening. But it is the detainees who themselves who are speaking. So these lawyers are just like those lawyers in the Gambia, making money on the blood, fuss and sweat of detainees. Let's proceed. It is up to the members to allow the hearing to last 5 minutes or 25 hours of different days of review if they choose to allow both parties to respond back and forth to reach a more comprehensively analyzed decision. Members are usually in a hurry to attend to all the detention reviews and would not give enough time to detainees to defend or respond to Ministers' Council submissions. You see, this is a routine process where people just want to cover the eyes of the society to make it look cosmetic. This definitely reflects the image of people like Essa Bokarr Sey. This definitely reflects the image of the former Minister of Justice in the Gambia, Babadindi Jabate, and others like Pahari Jabe. Today, are they not eating what they were cooking? Of course, yes. That is why it is not good to use law as cosmetics to cover the atrocities of a government. These people also will one day get their share. Let's proceed. The Ministers' Council get the first and last say all the time. I do not see democracy in this. Democracy, Muhammad? No. You're talking about justice here. Before we even think about democracy, there should be justice to begin with. Justice is absent there. That's why you are there, brother. And you shouldn't be there. Sometimes sworn affidavits and declarations of CBSA agents and the fabricated statements from Ministers' councils are enough to convince members in their decision making rather than substantial documentary evidence. Ministers' council reassure members that no authority or CBSA has interest in the outcome of a detention review, even though they sometimes challenge release orders of IRB members of the federal court to hinder the release of a detainee. Is that not cosmetic? Now, this is internal. They'll be shocked to know that we receive this. So that means that the Canadian government is not interested. All they want is for the reviews to happen. They will rush to court, pretend as if they are just stopping the proceedings to show the world that, oh, we have human rights, when actually that's what they want. They want these people kept and expelled for no reason. That is definitely disheartening and nerve-wracking. Canada, we are definitely shamed by this, and then you've definitely shattered the expectations of people. This is happening in the detention centers in Canada, obviously. In my case, I'm falsely accused of CBSA of traveling to Canada from the US through Niagara sometimes in December of 2010 with a supposed New York State driver's license, and I was supposedly issued a 6-month status and fingerprinted. Well, before they decide that within Canada, why can't they contact the US and ask them if it is true? Because there is a database here, metric system. Of course, they will be able to detect, biometrics are here. They will be able to detect and know whether that is true or not. Have they ever done that? According to the story we had and the report we had earlier, months back, they have never even tried that. It is obviously whirling allegations that are baseless until the proof is put on the table. For 2 years, CBSA cannot provide the tribunal with the supposed license, status or record of the fingerprint, or at least the exact day in which I supposedly traveled to Canada. Just a sworn statement from an officer is being used to support this hideous false allegation. CBSA is capable of providing these documents because they deal with the US like family, but they don't have it because it simply does not exist. Absolutely. That's what I just said earlier. Therefore, they cannot. But the US is not going to give them fabricated lies too. They must convince them, and they must show proof. And that is what they cannot do, because they will never contact these people. They cannot forge these documentation, as it would require photos, and I have accounts of all photos I took as to where and why. But unfortunately for you, Brother Muhammad and others, the lawyer is not even allowed to speak. Then it's not even about democracy, it is justice then, before we even talk about democracy. One of the false allegations with regards to the records of the fingerprints was retracted by a minister's counsel, having presented by my lawyer. Let me repeat that. One of the false allegations with regards to the records of the fingerprints was retracted by a minister's counsel, having present by my lawyer, because there is no proof. At least the lawyer has tried here, so he's a little bit better than the lawyers in the Gambia then. But let's proceed. But what is unfortunate and disheartening is for the lawyer in the detention center is not even allowed to speak up, and he did not, or she did not even call the press conference out of that prison center and tell them this is what happened. They have not challenged by members of all for making false allegations and misleading the tribunal, or asked to provide evidence besides a CBSA agent sworn statement. Members only ask detainees for proof of their claims and would tarnish their credibility if they fail to support their claim with numerous substantial documentary evidence despite being incarcerated. The retraction of Minister's Counsel D should raise concern of how she lacks credibility, but the members do not care. The members must hold her or CBSA responsible for misleading the tribunal or further investigate the rest of their claims, but they said and did absolutely nothing. When I raised the issue, the member was like a dead clock. No movement or sound. Retraction of statements should enlighten the member that Minister's Counsel or CBSA could be interested in the outcome of detention reviews because they have provided wrong information that misleads them for years. The member knows little or nothing about the person concerned without submissions of Minister's Counsel, and this gives the Minister's Counsel a great considerable influence on the member's decision, big time. No independent investigations. Everything depends on the one that wants to electrocute you, keep you there, and imprison you and expel you back to a country like the Gambia, and then you'll be killed. That is definitely disheartening. This is why such travel bans that we see somehow or the other are meaningless, because charity begins at home. Protection should begin within these borders first before, and then it should also be extended to empowering those who are ready to take over power through the due process of law, democracy, and everything you call it. We must empower civil society organizations and political parties on the ground. There is not democracy in West Africa and Africa. Illegal immigration will continue. Refugees will continue spreading. Asylees will continue spreading. That is the fact, whether the West wants to hear it or not. Ministers' councils are highly respected and believable, as they are sworn into their duties and expected to be truthful without having interest in the outcome of any case. Members and ministers' councils are never strangers to each other, as they have met in tribunals many times every month for years. The strangers at these reviews are either the detainees or their lawyers. That is where the unfairness begins, and there is where it ends. If they are family, they are used to each other. This is why people are changed and transferred. This is why I respect America on that side. They transfer their ambassadors every 3 years. Whether the country, the host country, likes them or not, they must be changed. Familiarity breeds contempt, and there it comes again. It also breeds another thing, which is unfairness, because if you are used to a person, you become family, you become associates, you become close, and then you never see the unfair side of the other individual, because you are one unit in one perception. That is why Brother Muhammad and others are suffering. All the people from West Africa are suffering. And the xenophobia continues to germinate within these detention centers. That is absolutely not good. And Amnesty International, all the international organizations, media houses, one day will concentrate. Didn't I warn against us staying indifferent, or other powers in the West staying indifferent about the treatment of Alhaji Muhammad Sillah and Ibu Diop? Today what is happening? A travel ban, warning British citizens to avoid the Gambia. Well, didn't we say that? The same will come on Canada too. This thing must be internationalized, because the best way to fight terrorism, the best way to fight illegal immigration, is to show that these countries are different from the ones they are fighting, and then use their laws to protect those who are exposed to danger, and make sure that they empower them and promote these ideas, so that we will eject these undemocratic governments in these parts of the world. Then there will be peace, because without justice there will be no peace. Let's proceed. Even though these reviews are considered public hearings, the public is never present. Maybe they are screened and not allowed, or they are not interested. I am urging members of the public, migrant fighters, refugee councils, organizations, immigrant defenders, law students, lawyers, consultants, reporters, but no one is illegal, most specifically to diligently appear at these public immigration detention reviews at 385 Rexdale to witness the outcome of these proceedings. The federal court also must send its representatives to witness immigration detention reviews rather than wait for judicial review submissions of these bogus reviews. Detention reviews cost a lot with regards to acquiring a lawyer, let alone filing for judicial review at federal court. That's what I said earlier. The detention centers are a job market. Those doing the reviews are paid during sittings. The lawyers are using the blood and force of detainees to open their offices, and then they're like they're like an abattoir of human flesh. Each of these persons survives. Without the detention centers, they are jobless. It becomes close to impossible, and it must be submitted in a timely fashion with extensive legal fees, and becomes moot by the time the next review occurs. 30 days later, the nuisance of immigration reforms might not be punitive in nature, but its implementation by CBSA reveals to be razor sharp. Maybe that's the whole idea. But supervision, accountability, and transparency must be the guiding principle levied in CBSA by the federal government. That is why such governments cannot stand against Yahya Jammeh, because that is what is absent in the Gambia too. We can see a lot of similarities between what is happening in the detention center in Toronto and other places and what takes place in Mile 2. The only difference is that at least these places, they have not yet applied physical torture, but the torture being applied there, it could be worse because it's psychological torture. To avoid all potential false allegations brought to immigration tribunals, CBSA island officers must be armed with cameras and recorders as a third party in separating facts from fiction, because their sworn statements or declarations cannot be enough to prove their claims, even if they were truthful. Such devices give more accurate, detailed events of accounts than relying on human intelligence and accounts. Of course, sincere human intelligence could be more powerful than the electronic side of it, because the electronic side of it could be doctored too. Now the issue is ethics and compliance. The issue is to be truthful to yourself and to be truthful to what you swore to maintain. That is it. Devices don't have emotions or interest in persuading information personally, but CBSA or ministers' councils could, because they are human. Human beings tend to lie sometimes, mislead, become emotional, or have personal interest in the outcome of our jobs or daily achievements, which is absolutely true. And if a human being intends to lie, he uses emotion, that very human being controls electronic devices too. They can doctor documents. So everything begins with the human being and ends with the human being. We have the tendency to be selfish because we are not perfect, but CBSA is perfect. Removal officers are indeed amazing. They treat immigrants like family. In quotes, that's just sarcasm he's using there. They are considerate and do provide all assistance needed for a rather smooth removal process. That is right. Definitely, if the moment they become human, which you mean, you're making it easy for them to expel you. the more they expel, the more they are giving accolades and then giving badges and promoted, isn't it? They are polite in their tone of voice and would help answer all questions pertaining to our immigration matter or deportation. I guess they are the last straw of this whole immigration ordeal, and they make it easy for downing us, having already been chewed in tribunals by ministers' councils. Then that is what we call, in our part of Africa, the habit of the rat. The rat will bite and blow at the same time. That is dangerous. Such characters are slimy and colorless, and they will apply poison in your body and you think they are nice. There is a great understanding in CBSA inland officers' duties in repelling criminals and undocumented immigrants among the duties in protecting Canadians, but they are indeed rampant in their duty and would lambast the most vulnerable immigrants. Then you see, this brother is fair because he is giving them the benefit of the doubt as far as doing the perfect job is concerned. Illegal immigration, some are criminals of course, but the genuine ones should be separated from the criminals. The security of Canada is their topmost agenda, and thousands have been deported in a year, having been accused of snatching jobs from Canadians, but there are no thousands of jobs available yet. By the way, a Mexican lady is dead. Who is next? Now the issue is, does that provide an answer? Running around the city in streets, arresting people and expelling them out of Canada or any other country in the Western Hemisphere for that matter? Of course that is not. The issue of illegal immigration, the issue of banditry and anything they call it, stems from those countries that they tend to ignore, saying that they are supporting those governments with through non-governmental organizations and all one. In fact, sometimes when I read these stories about Canada, it's like a movie for me, because from the time I was in high school up to the time I rose to become an international civil servant, I was thinking that Canada is one of the best countries on earth as far as human rights, promotion of human rights, enhancing the lives of others, being tolerant and accommodating. I'm really shocked. I mean it. Definitely, yes. And for that matter, not to play politics, I give kudos to the United States of America, because definitely I believe that these kind of things, even if they were to happen in certain detention centers, it is not to this magnitude. Thank you very much, listeners.